So in the last video we spoke about BlueGenie at the CLI level to look for command line parameters. Here we're actually going to run help inside of the BlueGenie console to look at all the ways to pull help information and understand all the other functions inside of BlueGenie. So here we're actually just going to run BlueGenie. Give it a couple seconds. It actually will tell you its load time. And then what you'll see at the bottom is the banner. The banner is actually just a quick description of that. So the BluSapphire.net. This is a part of it. So this is BlueGenie. And then below you can see that it has just an example on how you can run help to pull information. So right off the bat, you can do a quick help. So here we're actually going to run get BG help. And with this instance, we can actually run get BlueGenie help, and this will actually give you a list of all of the functions and their description fields on how they're pulled. So you can see here we have BlueGenie firewall, add Windows firewall rules for the rule configuration files. Here you have a connect. This is an alias. This one is connect BlueGenie to system will spawn a remote session into a computer that you specify, so on and so forth. So you can actually process this like the more command for the command prompt. You can actually keep on parsing 25 line items at a time. So here we're going to hit enter. We're going to see another list, and hit enter one more time, and we'll see one more. So we keep on getting a list of items with all of the functionality that we have. So at the current moment, there's roughly 180 internal functions that are specific to the BlueGenie console. So this can do a whole lot, but this help will actually parse all of that information for all the functions and all of the descriptions for you. So it makes it easy to find certain things. But let's say out of 180 functions for this instance, we want to actually look at something that resembles what we're trying to execute, right? So here I'm going to actually break this. So I'm going to hit Q to quit. It's going to bring me back to the main console window. I'm going to actually do a clear screen. In this instance, I'm actually going to run a regex string that's going to just parse BlueGenie's help information here. We're actually going to look for anything in the commandlet name and or description field that resembles registry or files and folders. So here it found a handful of items, but you can see the list is a lot shorter, a lot more structured. We found something that's specific to our criteria, anything that's registry or files and folders. And here you can see this command right here is get child item list. It's a little different than get child item, but it does not have anything as far as registry, files, or folders in its name. And that's because the description field is also being searched when it's doing parsing. So it's looking at both the commandlet name and the description field to see if this criteria is found in any there, and then it processes that information. With that said, you can see that in our when we first loaded the banner, we saw that there was a -search parameter here. What we're doing is this is automatically position 0, which is the first position in the parameter string. We can actually call that using the actual flag. So in this instance, we're actually just going to up arrow and go back to this, and we can actually call that parameter. We can actually call that parameter really easily. So if we actually just type in search and we hit tab, we're actually just calling now that specific parameter. Here it was a shorthanded process. Here it's using the named parameter structure, and again we'll get that same criteria. So that same return structure. So now we have specific information that we're looking for. Let's say we want to actually parse that help and see a little bit more, or we want to understand a little bit more about the function itself. So let me clear the screen again. And for this, we're actually going to use another helper function to actually break down and show us a very unique way of looking at the command line function, all of its parameters, any of its examples, how to execute it in a more robust manner. So by default, PowerShell, since this is built on PowerShell, if you typed in help, and that's the alias, or get help, and then you typed in the command itself, so here we're actually going to run get bg sysevent, and so let this tab complete. Now we're going to see a normal PowerShell help screen, right? So name, description information, any related links, anything else. But this is good and all, but it doesn't actually break down on how things are executing, doesn't show me what the default strings are. You know, it's not always easy to understand. So here you can see that this cache path is a string, DB name is a string, DB path is a string, this is update DB is a switch. Some things, yes, if you understand PowerShell specifically, you'll be able to pick up on this, but there's going to be a lot of times where you don't understand it and or you want something that's just a little bit easier. So in this instance, we're actually going to do a get bg system info, and there is a help parameter associated to every single one of the internal functions. So here we're going to actually run that, and here you'll see that we have a little bit fancier help information. So we still have the same command description, we still have the same command syntax. The difference here is now we have this current command. So this is actually telling us how the command would actually execute just by calling get bg system info. So the cache path has a default path, there's a DB name already assigned, there's a DB path already there, and there's a format view. Now, if you action this script, this will pretty much only query for system information. It has a cache path, but no value because you actually did not tell it to flag to use the cache path. So that's what the switch is for. You could do the same thing with DB name and DB path because they are items that can be updated. They have a default. They are actually flagged because they're default, but they will not actually execute or be used because you did not flag for update DB or new DB table as one of the switches, so those two items will not be actioned. And then for the format view, that's set to none. By default, BlueGenie's return is in hash. So it is a hash it is a hash table, but you can action those to other things like YAML, JSON, unescaped JSON, CSV, so on and so forth. And again, they're not piped commands. So we're not piping to another commandlet outside where you have to control that. That's actually all controlled within the commandlet itself just by flagging one of the parameters. So you'll notice that there's a parameter section with all the defaults there. And there you can see there's a show updates, false. I don't see anything that says show updates in this list. Another one that says use cache, false. So you know that these are switches. They're set to Boolean, so false. Remove cache, so on and so forth. And then we have an options list in here. And now this is where the help is actually really cool because it's very unique in the sense that it will walk you through on how to make those changes, right? So let's say I wanted it to flag show updates. In this instance, I can actually type in show updates to update the value, and here we will do that. I'm actually going to cut it off and not put the S in there because I want to show you what happens when you do process this information. So there's a validation to this as well, and this is all built in to literally stand on top of the PowerShell help. So all this information for all the functions is just coming from the default help information of a normal PowerShell function, except this helper function is now managing it at a level that actually does checks and balances, make sure you're writing the right information, make sure that you're processing any updates that are supposed to be processed. So nothing happened because nothing was actioned because obviously we typed it in wrong. But if we typed in, this time we do a show updates, plural, and we hit enter, you can see that the show updates flag has been set to true. And you will also notice that our current command has now been updated as well. And so now you can see that our get bg system info is now has show updates as a switch parameter that was already built into our string. And so with that said, we can actually update these in real time, see what they look like, see what they do some items that have validation sets, and then we can come back here and say, oh, this is what our command looks like. I'm going to copy this out and add it to an artifact, or if I even wanted to execute this in real time, I can actually just type in run, and it will execute that command for me with all the parameters that were updated. So we'll do the same thing for use cache just to show that off. So we're going to type in use cache, hit enter as well. You can see use cache is now flagged as true, and if you look up here, use cache is now set in the string itself. Let's say we wanted to change our cache path to something specific. So here we'll change cache path, we'll hit enter. Now it's going to ask you enter a value in here, and knows it's a string, so you could type in pretty much anything you want. Here we'll actually type in ctemp, and you can see the cache path has changed in the parameter section to ctemp. And also up in the current command section, our new command string has been built. Here's getBG system info, show updates, use cache, and then our new cache path has our ctemp in it. So this is very robust in the fact that it will walk you through all of the commands that you, or all the parameters rather, that are needed for this command to work. It will do validation of a handful of things. It will set your flags true, false, so on and so forth. So it's an amazing tool when it comes to help. It's very robust. So let's say we want to look at some other values of this. We don't want to just change parameters. We actually want to see some items. So here we can actually type in help to get more description information. So here we'll type in help. And you can see now we have a list of all the values, all the parameters, and we can actually get specific description fields for these items. So let's say I wanted to check out what the new DB table information is. Here you can see it's a switch parameter, the description. It does a full delete and recreate of the database table. There's no notes, no alias, no validation set. It is not required. It is a named position parameter. Default value is to false. It accepts pipelines, is set to false as well, and it accepts wildcards, also set to false. So this just gives you, you can walk through these things, and here let's just do another one real quick. We'll do return object, and you can walk through each one of these items to get a full understanding of what the parameter is used for, and what its default information is, what you can set it to. Does it have a positional field? Is it a named parameter? So on and so forth. So here's another one, return information as an object. So instead of returning as a hash table, this will literally return as an object. So changing the format of its output by default. Let's head on back. So when you're at the help information screen, you can see the last item is, if you type in back, it will back, or if you just leave it blank, it will go back to the main menu. So we'll just leave it blank and go back to the main menu. What we also want to look at is the examples, right? So here we're going to do the same thing as we did with help. We're going to type in examples and we get an example list. So what you're normally familiar with is what 9 looks like, which is the default PowerShell list of examples. So it's just a chopped up version of all the examples displayed to the foreground, and you have to go through each one. It works, but it's not super clean. This presents everything on one screen. There's no scrolling. It reads the description field. It makes it very clear on what you're trying to call, so description fields are very important. And here you can see general help information for the Windows help. So let's look at what the example 2 is. So example 2 is using the fully qualified commandlet name, so get BluGenie system info. We were actually calling one of the aliases, so we were using the short name, so get BG system info. The other one is get system info, also works. And then obviously the parameter was show updates, because that's what we were looking for. We were looking for something that was going to show us the updates. So that was the parameter that we used. We would execute this command and we'd get that information that we were looking for. Again, we'll leave it blank. We get back to the main menu. Here, if we liked this command, we can actually save it, or again, exit or even run. And in this case, we're just going to exit to get back to the main menu. And that's a quick description of, or an overview of what the internal help information or functionality is inside of BlueGenie.